Exactly.
Where you went to, but you know what? I went there once to do a seminar.
Raise it up. Cheers. Welcome to
Wanted to make sure I got the volume all right.
Today, and everything works well.
And we're like
So I'm used to this in this current role as well.
right on. So I'm super excited today to welcome a new guest to our show, the Shop Talk Quinny podcast. Her name is Cindy, and Cindy is a fashion entrepreneur. She's a mom, she's a wife, and huge emphasis on leading with kindness. Cindy, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's so great to be here. I love everything you do, and I'm really proud to be here on the show with you today.
Awesome. So glad to have you here. So Cindy, I'm just for the people that are listening to the show, as an intro, maybe introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and where you grew up and where you reside right now.
Okay, sounds great. So my name is Cindy MacNeil, and I have a couple of hats that I wear. I work with a modeling and talent agency as the Chief Operations Officer, and I also have my own fashion company where we promote being accountable for your actions and doing what you can in your community to be a better human. I grew up in a really small place in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, and I now live in a little bit of a bigger city, but it's still really small, in Halifax, in Nova Scotia. And I've always preached kindness and loving one another, and I do that through fashion now.
That's awesome and so incredible. Like when I hear the words, or a lot of people when they hear the words fashion entrepreneur, it's like, oh, what is that? That sounds cool. Elaborate for me on how you view fashion entrepreneurship and what that looks like in your world.
So in my world, it usually means I break my days into, sometimes I'm coaching models and talent to find their voice, to find their path, to pursue their passions in ways that make them proud of themselves. And on the other with the other hat, I actually have a label called Michelle Robert, where we make what we call extra wear. And we make like fashion capes and bow ties and things that make you stand out from the crowd. And what we mean to do with that is say, stand up, stand out with your fashion and with your beliefs and morals. So we want you to look good, but also be good.
I love that. I love that. Let's take a step back, because obviously like
Sure.
what you're doing now, like there's so much on your resume, very impressive. And I'm so curious about like talk about
So
like
sweet.
you growing up, like when was that like time in your life where you had that spark and you thought, I want to go into fashion. I want to lead with kindness. This is kind of the direction that I'm going in. Take us back to that time in your life and what that looked like.
Sure. Growing up, I always had this, well, starting out, my grandmother, she's a very, you better be kind of woman, or if you're not kind, you're going to be dealing with her, and we did not want to deal with her. So, so I always had her voice in the back of my head. Whenever anything was happening around me, anybody was being bullied or anybody was being unkind, I was a jump in kind of girl. So if I saw someone being treated poorly, I was really on top of that. I had no tolerance, and I still have no tolerance for it. So, I always called myself the bully's bully, which sounds really bad. Sounds really bad. But what
I
I mean
resonate
by
with
that
that.
is
I
I
resonate
just
with
don't
that.
stand back. Like, I think we're in a world right now where if you stand back, you're saying yes to that behavior. And I just don't believe in that. I believe if you have a voice and you can use it, you should absolutely use that voice. So that's been ingrained in me basically since birth. So that's always been the way I traveled along my path. And, growing up, I didn't like the standard stuff at the mall. So I was always cutting my clothes up and making them cooler and just adding my own flavor to it, my own individuality. And I really believe that people are all so cool. Like, we should all find our individuality and stuff that makes us feel confident, no matter what size we are. So I was never a small girl. I've always been a little on the thicker side. So I couldn't find that cool stuff that was offered to those smaller girls. So I made my own. And that's kind of where my fashion sense started to develop. And so that's my fashion sense and my kind of individuality and standing up for people kind of merged. Also, I always worked in mental health. So for my first degree was in psychology and marketing and business. So I always knew I wanted to have my own business, and I really care about people and what they think and feel. And I want to make, just like you, Josh, I want to make people feel comfortable around me. I want them to know they can talk to me. This is a judgment-free zone. So that's the stuff I always lead with. And I always say, lead with love, lead with kindness. It'll take you further. So I try, if someone's being cruel or whatever, I realize in my head that's probably more to do with them than me. So I take that breath and I take that minute to not react, but rather reflect and then talk after. Like, I always like to take that moment. You never know what people are going through, and it's nicer to just start off with kindness and love.
That's so true. Like, and it's so funny because it's so relevant,
Yeah.
even especially now. Like, just the amount of sheer like hatred and negativity that you
Yeah.
see out there. And you're right, it 100% says more about the person that's putting that type of energy out there than
Yeah.
who it's being directed to. And like, I have empathy for those people because there must be a lot of pain that they're
Yes.
dealing with on the inside that would lead them to act out in that way. And I think it's something that hasn't been talked about enough.
Absolutely. Hurt people. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I love this phrase, passion entrepreneur. And like, one of the reasons that I like it, Cindy, so much is because I truly believe that like entrepreneurship, it's like it's built around how you see the world and
Mhm.
what you want to put out there into the world and what that looks like. So I just love just the different nuances of what that statement means. Talk to me about, like, on the topic of COVID and this pandemic, how has things been for you? Like, it could be personally, it could be professionally, like during this time.
Yeah, personally and professionally, COVID has rocked my world, and I'm sure everyone around listening can relate because it hasn't left anyone untouched, I wouldn't say. But onto that, it almost shut the fashion world down, or it made us all pivot to online, which we weren't completely ready for. So, for example, my company, Michelle Robert, we are a community-based company. We do everything out in the community. We interact with our community. We're always trying to do events, and we call them impact events, where we help our community in ways that we can. So all of that was shut down because we're not allowed out in the community right now. So we had to quickly pivot to, how can we do this online? How can we still be community oriented and not be actually physically in the community? So that's kind of what we started doing. And what we did with that is we released a fashion summit where we had over 20 professionals in the industry online, and they came on and gave advice, how to pivot, how to grow, a lot of great information about what to do in these new times, and just ways to reach out, ways to network, ways to be more virtually experienced and things like that. In the fashion community, Josh, it was so cool. Like, everybody, every single person I reached out to said yes. So I am just so
Wow.
proud of our community. Yeah. So, and it was a great summit. It was a 4-day event that it's still available online, but it was live for 4 days. it was a lot of work, but so worth it. And the people we met were just so rich with knowledge, and everybody wanted to help. Everybody wanted to, you know, offer that advice to try and just help lift other people up. And, you know, the fashion community has a bad rap, but we're pretty cool people and we're pretty nice.
What was like some takeaways from you for you? Because like you talk about like having the summit and partnering with people that can really could, you know, give great insight on how to pivot during this
Yeah.
time. Talk to me specifically about even from a marketing perspective, like what infrastructure have you had to put in place, or that you've seen become effective for you and your business at this point?
Yeah, so a big one for us was that we actually had to pay attention to our website, which we weren't really doing before that. And another one was that we decided to start going online live more, so people could see our faces and see our hearts and see our message. So it's one thing to like write a sentence on your website like we care, blah blah blah, but it's another thing to actually get out there and show people why you care, what you stand for, and what's unique about you. So a big takeaway I took from the summit is just to never let anyone else control your voice and who you are. And that no matter how many people are in your category, only one of those people is you. So the biggest thing you're selling and the biggest thing that you offer is your uniqueness, your heart, your voice. So never be afraid to like rock that, show that, and own it. Like never be afraid to own who you are. And that I believe is what has taken me as far as it has so far. And a lot of people on the summit said a lot of that same stuff. And also another big thing they were all saying is be kind and be fearless. Don't be scared to reach out to people, because people are often more accessible than you think. And I found that to be absolutely true.
I totally agree with that. You know, it's funny you say that, because like right before COVID started, like at the beginning of 2020, I started this podcast, and it was actually meant to be like a live presentation in a barber shop. That's why we called it Shop Talk Quinny. And literally like the first episode was like myself and like 6 other entrepreneurs just sitting in a barber shop with like wine and cheese and just
That
having
sounds
like
awesome.
it was great, and we just had like a very authentic conversation. We had a moderator there, and film and video and stuff. So that was the first episode, and then once COVID hit, like we couldn't do any of that. So I pivoted to platforms like Zoom, Google Meet, and just started, to your point, reaching out to people. And I think you're totally correct. Like people are way more accessible than we think. And like it's funny because like I on the marketing side, I actually encourage people, especially during this time. And I love what you said about like going live more, and that like that was like the biggest observation that I noticed in the business world when COVID happened, is that like that need for human communication, human connection was huge. And it was like, how do we facilitate that? And that's a part of how like these episodes came to birth. So I really appreciate you sharing.
Love it. Oh, of course. Yeah. It's just so important. I found that there were so many situations where, you know, I was so nervous to contact. Like one of our guests was the president of the Canadian Art and Fashion Awards. I was so nervous to contact her. And then I was like, you know, what's the worst that can happen? She might say no. That's the worst case scenario.
Right.
And so I just was like, you know what? Do it anyway. So I reached out to her. She was so excited to say yes. So I was blown away. So if you don't go ahead and give it a try, you're definitely getting a no because you didn't even try.
Couldn't agree more. Let's talk about takeaways, because like I've come out with so much perspective out of this entire situation. What's been a huge takeaway for you that's kind of moving you into the future? Like, what are some primary takeaways from your perspective that you'll maybe take with you into the future post pandemic?
Yeah, a huge takeaway is to never lose that human connection. Don't forget that you're a human first, and everyone you're talking to is also a human first. No matter what you're selling, at first you're selling yourself. You're selling who you are, and people will always connect with your personality and the human that you are before they ever care about any product you're selling. So that was a big one for me. And also, the thing about fear is that, yeah, you're going to have fears. They happen. You're going to be nervous. But you know what? Push through, because you're going to feel that fear and do it anyway. Then you'll be so much more proud of yourself for overcoming that and realizing, you know what, that wasn't so scary. And I found that really took me a lot of places, because I was so nervous to contact people. And then all of a sudden, everyone's saying yes, and everyone loves the idea, and everyone's on board. So feel that fear, because that's normal. You're going to feel fear. You're going to feel anxiety. It lives around us all the time. So you're not going to avoid those things. But what you can do is feel the fear and do it anyway. So those two were big takeaways for me, that human connection and that overcoming fear. I would say those two were the largest. And reach out to people when you need help, either emotionally or with your work. I needed technological help several times, and I was nervous, but I reached out to people and the answers were so quick and easy. So don't be scared to reach out. Don't be scared of anything. Like, just feel the fear and do it anyway. Those were my big takeaways from this.
I love that. I love that. Do you find that, like, in the fashion industry itself, like, do you find like there's a lack of that, like people feeling like they can't reach out? Maybe there's kind of a misinterpretation of competition, trying to be better than the next person. Do you find like there's a real missed opportunity there in the fashion world?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I find a lot of people are like hiding their cards or holding them close. But really the truth is there's room for everyone. And I'm really I'm hoping that people start to develop more of an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset, because that scarcity mindset makes you think that, you know, it's a slice of pie and everyone can only get a tiny little piece. And that's just not true. That's not how it is. It's actually, as we have more, if you want to pretend it's a pie, the pie just gets bigger. There's lots of pieces. We're never going to run out of pieces of pie for everyone. So that scarcity mindset is something that's around. Oh, they're going to steal my design. Oh, they're going to steal my idea. It doesn't matter. They're not you. They're not going to be you. Even if you and your twin start the same business, it's going to be different because you're different. So it really doesn't matter. You don't have to hide your cards. You don't have to stop sharing. And actually you'll be richer by sharing, I find, because you'll get that feedback and that flow and that back and forth that you wouldn't get if you're just hiding by yourself in the basement, you know?
It's
So I
so
say, let
true.
it out. Yeah.
It's so true, and I think
Yeah.
it's so important to bring that into the now, because like what we're seeing is that the people that share the most and give the most value, expecting nothing in return, like
Yes.
those are the people that are building a brand that's going to be here like 10, 20, 30 years from now, versus people that are just focused on like the bottom line, just focused on the next sale, and that's all their business becomes, is a sales driven
Yeah.
pipeline, but no infrastructure within a brand that would really keep them around for years and years to come.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, where it's not really about uh, like expecting stuff. Like, I don't like when you do things, and I try to never do things with expectations of some sort of a return or some sort of a. So I love that you said that, Josh, because if you just do things because you want to and because it's genuine to who you are, you're going to get that return just because, it's just going to come back to you. If you start doing things, expecting things in return, you're going to always be disappointed. People are going to see that you're not genuine, and you're not going to last very long in this business.
Couldn't agree more. It's funny. It's so interesting. I put a post out today on like TikTok, Instagram, talking about like just the huge misconception of like likes and followers and people overvaluing that compared to actual authentic engagement and relationship building. It's something I come across so often, where people will overvalue the likes and followers, and they'll forget about the fact that social media was meant to be social. You were meant to engage and respond to comments, respond to DMs, DM people, and provide value. This is not a sales game. This is a brand game, which leads to real business results. But people lack patience. They just want it now. Like, and they just think, well, if it's not happening now, then what am I doing this for? And it's like, man, you got the entirely wrong idea.
Yeah, that patience bit. Ooh, that's important. And I still work on that myself, because sometimes, as patient as I try to be, sometimes I do forget, and I want it now too. And I'm always like, why can't people see? And things like that. But I have to remember, be patient, one step at a time, one person at a time, one conversation at a time. And as far as social media goes, I try to think of it like me and you right now. I'm gonna treat you like the beautiful human you are, no matter where we are, online, offline. I'm just gonna be me. And I would hope more people would start to see the world that way. Like, when I see cruel comments, I'm like, who raised you? Who raised you? Who raised you? Like, I can't handle it. And that's where I lose my patience, because because I'm like, you are talking to a human. You're talking to a real human. Yes, they're on the other side of the computer or the phone or whatever you're on. But at the end of the day, they're a real human. And would you really talk to them like that if you were really beside them on the street? Probably not. So let's not do that to each other.
I love that. Like, and that's in your Instagram bio. Like, I'll be me, you be you. Like, I love that, because it's like,
thank you.
It's giving people the space and the place to just be themselves. Like, even if you don't agree with something that person is doing, I mean, like outside of like it being legal or illegal,
right?
Like,
I know what you mean.
It's not for you to go over there and be like, nah, I don't like what you're doing. I don't agree with what you're doing. Like unless it's hurting somebody else, or like that's, life would be boring if everybody was the same.
Right. And that's the other thing. If you and I could disagree on absolutely everything in the world, but I can still respect you. I can still give you the respect you deserve, because you're living your life and I'm living mine. And we should both be at peace with that.
I love that phrase, being at peace.
Yes.
What would you, because like I'm so big on this topic, because like peace to me is like the ultimate wealth. Like, a lot of people, when they think about wealth, they think about money, they think about material things. I actually think about like relationships, like people that know a few people that know like everything about you, or just being at peace with who you are on the inside as well as on the outside. Talk to me about how, if and how you've been able to maintain peace in the here and now.
Yeah, a lot of that comes from me. Really, I set my intentions every day. Every day I wake up and I'm like, who am I going to make smile today? So I'm always thinking, like, I know who I am and I know how I want the world to see me. So I have to remember that that's who I want to be all the time. No matter who anyone around me is, I remain me. And I love when people find that in themselves. And I actually do help people find that for themselves. It's a big component of what I do with the modeling and talent agency. I make sure they understand who they are themselves, and I want them to even a sticky note on the mirror, a note on their phone, a reminder, like, you know who I am. Like my sticky notes and reminders are, you're the patient one that's kind. Your smile matters. I'm just trying to think of a couple of the other ones, but I always have these little reminders around of who I am, and I constantly remind myself of who that is and who I want that person to be portrayed as. Because as soon as you lose sight of that, you start making mistakes. You start pushing people away. You start denying your realness and your inner self, and then you start not valuing yourself and not valuing who you are, and then you kind of project that onto other people. And I never want to project my issues onto other people. People got enough problems of their own. So I always try to remind myself that, no matter who you are, I'm going to be me. No matter how you come at me, I'm still going to come back at you the proud way that I can come back at you, and I can sleep at night because I'm proud of myself for being me and not a reaction of you. So that's kind of my big thing, Josh. I try to make sure I don't react to you, but I just remain me.
I love that. Where do you think that comes from? Like, do you think it's like your upbringing, like how your parents raised you? Like, where do you think that self-awareness came from for you?
Yeah, I think I attribute that really to like my mom and my grandmother. There's a few sisters. They are all, there's a lot of strong women with a lot of strong opinions. They don't always have the same opinions, but they always respect each other. So they always were around me where they could have these big conversations and totally disagree, but be respectful, love each other, hug, serve the food. Like, there was none of this, oh, you don't agree with me, so you're wrong and I'm out. Like, there was none of that. It was always like, oh, you don't agree with me? Like, that's interesting. Like, tell me more. And I always find when I have conversations with people that I don't agree with, I find those conversations fascinating. I'm never upset that I don't agree with you. I just want to hear why. Like, tell me more. Like, I'm really interested. Like, why do you view this? And sometimes those conversations can lead me to change my mind a little bit. And sometimes they don't, and that's okay too. But you have to keep in mind that each one of us is on our own journey, and it's none of my business what you think of me. It's none of my business. All I need to know is what I think of me. And my mom and my grandmother and my aunts, like, they're all about that. Like, it's just, well, are you proud of yourself? Then we're good. Are you not proud of yourself? Then you better fix something. So yeah, I think a lot of it is to do with my upbringing. And also just that I feel like I'm just a big empath. So I feel the feelings and I want you to be happy and I never want to hurt anyone. So that's kind of a big part of me as well. So I guess like my heart's always right here. So so that's probably a big part of it. And I attribute that to my mom and my grandmother and my family for sure.
You said something huge. That's my like takeaway. That's probably going to be the title of this podcast.
Oh,
It's none of my business what you
none,
think about me. Woo!
none,
I love
none,
that.
none, none.
It's
Because
none
that's
of
just an
my
opinion.
business.
None. Yeah.
I love that. Like it
Yeah.
like
I live by that.
that is so incredible. I love that phrase. Like, and it speaks to like people that deal with anxiety,
Yes.
depression, like a lot of it. Somebody said, like, if there was nobody else on this planet, you probably wouldn't have any stress and anxiety. Like
Yeah.
it's the opinions of others, it's the thoughts of others, it's like the box that we tend to put ourselves in that
Yeah.
creates that anxiety and stress. And if we just, if the approach of like, it's none of my business what you think of me, so why am
None.
I going to let that those thoughts or those opinions rent space in my head?
That's right. They don't deserve, I'm not renting that space out. So no, no, no.
I love it. I love it. Cindy, let the people know that are going to be listening to this where they can find you, where they can get a hold of you.
Okay. So I have my TikTok. It's Cindy MacNeil. I have a lot of fun on there. But I'm a huge advocate for social justice and social issues. So my TikTok is a mix of funny, crazy, and serious, be nice. And I also have my two websites, which is my fashion website. It's Michelle-Robert, Rober.ca. That's the capes and bow ties and stuff. And then the fashion company I work with is Solely Productions with an S.com. And we're all about diversity and changing the aspect of fashion. Like, we're here to change it up. We're here to make sure every little girl and every little boy sees themselves on those billboards, in those magazines, on TV. That's our mission. So that's basically me. Oh, and I'm on Instagram too, Cindy Al MacNeil.
I love it. I love it. And for anybody listening too, I actually met Cindy on TikTok.
Yeah.
How she came to be on this podcast today. So for
Yeah.
all you businesses, people, entrepreneurs that you're kind of wavering, you're not sure if TikTok's the place for you, it 110%
100.
is.
I love my TikToks.
I've met some incredible people like Cindy on there, and so excited to see how your journey continues to unfold, Cindy. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you so much, Josh. Likewise, I love everything you do. So glad we met, and keep rocking it, sweetheart, because you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you so much. You too. You take care.
Thank you. You too, Josh.